Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of me drawing. I actually had it in me to do a voiceover this time. So my biggest issue coming back to digital art is I am using Photoshop. I've used Paint Tool SI for the majority of my life, and anybody who uses it, most people who use it know that there's this point where your tablet works just fine, but then once you go into SI, it just stops working. And usually this is like a driver issue, you need to uninstall, reinstall, but I did that and it didn't work. So I'm stuck using Photoshop, which isn't a terrible thing. It just took me a very long time to remember how to shade and to set up my brushes properly, and it's looking better and all. But one thing you'll notice about my art style is I tend to mold things a bit. Like you can see right there how it's all really crazy, but really soon it's going to all come together. I really like being able to sort of chisel away the image. I always struggled with traditional art because once it's there, it's there. And that was always such a big struggle for me doing traditional art. But doing digital, I feel like the possibilities are endless. I don't feel like a mistake is going to ruin everything. I feel like mistakes are actually just helping me shape the image to how it needs to be. So I'm going to talk about the image overall. I always curse myself. I put a lot of work and effort into my art, and I'm always so mad about it at the end of the day. This video is going to be 25 minutes long, and this is 6.5 hours worth of footage. All it's going to be is an animatic, which didn't even need to be full color, it just needed to be some images. So hopefully my animatic will be really cute when it comes out. I'm really excited for it, but we will get there when we get there. So Photoshop was really fighting me. My biggest thing was that I needed to fix the brushes so that I could get my shading right, which I do eventually get that. It just kind of takes a second. The other thing that was really giving me issues was, for some reason, all of the layers wanted to automatically default to the RGB channel, and at this point I know enough about the error to go Google it and figure it out, and I probably will after I record this video. But for now, it was just an obstacle that was going to take too much time, and I just want to draw. Whenever I get in the mood of I'm going to watch something and draw while I watch it, I don't really want to have to do a bunch of other steps beforehand, so my bad on that. But there are a lot of times in this video where you'll see me start to do something, but I can't because the layer's red, which means it's on the RGB channel, and it's very annoying. It's like the masking channel that it keeps getting on, and I'm not even sure what it does. I'm sure it does something important and all that. I just don't know how I changed my setting to make it so that every time I click on a layer, I have to switch it to the RGB rather than the masking channel. It's ridiculous. It's been really annoying. Another thing I've been having is if I try to copy paste, I do that a lot, especially for like background stuff where I need repeating patterns. I'll just copy paste, merge down. But for some reason, every time I would copy paste, I would go to move the image and it would try to move a completely different layer. So I would have to make the object bigger or smaller, I'd have to adjust the object and then I'd be able to move it. So there were a lot of really big issues with Photoshop that just were really irritating the fuck out of me. It took a long time for me to finally get to a point where I was using Photoshop right. Even right here, I'm not really getting it right, but at least I'm finally starting to get her face and the shape of her body and everything right. My art is the definition of trust the process, because once I get all this done, the first scene of this animatic is going to be the big part of the scene with, my character with the photographs in the background, and it's going to zoom in on one of the photos, and it's going to be really cool. But the first one, there's going to be fairy lights, but technically Christmas lights. I think I want to make them colored, and they're going to be softly blinking in the background for the first scene, and that'll be really pretty. And then he'll be like asking a picture of his wife, which is that other picture I have going on in the other tab, but it's not looking too hot right now. It's gonna go back to his face, and then it's going to slowly zoom in on the mountain picture on the right hand side, and I'll speak up whenever I get to actually drawing out that part, because I think it's nice. Each one of these photos are going to have a lot of personality. Seth Fargo is his name, and he is quite a family man. He has a daughter, he has 2 sons, he has a handful of grandchildren, and he even has some great-grandchildren. And he loves his family very much, almost as much as he loves his dead wife. And he is a good little guy. He's a good little dude. So I wanted to make a really big point how he takes pictures of his family every moment he gets, how he cherishes his family, and how he is a soft, gentle, kind man. A family man, if you would. I really want to make this story. I want to animate this story. This is my baby. Seth Fargo is not the main character, although he is the main character of this animatic. I really wanted to make something romantic and sweet, and that's why I made this. Evelyn is the main character of this show, of this story of mine, and she's pretty dope. I love her. She's not going to be a very liked character, but she will be a good character. And I have tons of characters. I just have tons of characters that are really great in here that I'm very excited to share with the world and make. And I keep telling myself I have so many things that I want to make, but it is not going to matter if I don't make one thing. So even if it turns out to just be this little animatic that gets me a little boost, then it's this animatic that gives me a boost, you know? Everything that we do and create is just progress and experience that's going to help us create more later down the line. So I'm very passionate already as it is about story writing and storytelling and art and animation and all of these wonderful, beautiful things that come together to create the stories that we consume. I have a lot of passion, not only about making these stories, but about making stories about people who don't often get acknowledged. Shading was something that took me a while to get good at as an artist in general. And going to Photoshop did make this very complicated on me. I've already mentioned how the shading was difficult for me, but I really had a system to it in Paint Tool Sai that was effortless. And so it really took me a while to get the blending tool correct for this. And like I said, I do eventually get it, but it does take me a while. I know the background photos don't really need much detail. I mean, this one probably would have needed detail either way, because this painting of his wife is canonically painted by him. So I wanted it to kind of look like it could have been painted in like the 1600s. There are probably other things that I could do to age the drawing to make it look a little more cracked and worn and all that jazz, but I'm fine with it how it is now. I'm also going to add a very ornate frame around it to just kind of show that this painting has a lot of love and history behind it. So the pictures behind him are going to be actual photos. That one of his kid's birthday is going to be a Polaroid. I'm going to turn it into a Polaroid type photo. Of course, that's his daughter with his 2 grandchildren. That photo is about 100 years old, give or take. Oh, he's a vampire, by the way, so that's why he looks like that, and he has grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And then everything that isn't a photo is going to be a painting. The picture of him at sea is a painting by his brother. There are a couple of scenery photos that are also going to emulate paintings. So I wanted to take this moment to talk about a little phenomenon that some people know by now, more people know by now, because it's being more talked about. I've known about it for quite a while. I've always thought it was very interesting, but there's something called aphantasia. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, and I don't have that. So what I'm talking about is there is a level of mental imagery that each person can do. It's usually on a scale of 1 to 5, and from the chart that I'm looking at, 5 is aphantasia. So what am I talking about? Well, what the heck am I talking about? So when you see objects in your mind, if you do, that is your ability to visualize and use your imagination. I'm not sure the science. I'm just, I'm going off on a whim here. And thankfully, I'm a level 1, which means if I were to imagine an apple, I would be able to imagine the reds and the greens and the yellows, if there are yellows. Usually it's just like red with a little bit of green. And I can imagine the lighting and like the pores of the apple and the shading and even the angle. Everything about the apple, I can see it in my head. And I've heard people with aphantasia talk about how it's a bummer how they think that it holds them back in art because they cannot visualize what they want to create. And I kind of disagree, actually. In my experience, I have the opposite problem where it gets in the way, but in a different way. I can see things really, really well in my mind's eye. And that's a big part of why my color pops so much. Even though color is separate from this, I really love color, and usually I can find the right color on my first or second pick. Color has always come very naturally to me because I can see it. I can see color. I can dream in color. I just love color. When it comes to other things like anatomy and shapes and really basic stuff, perspective, lighting, shading, everything that I mentioned that I can see in my mind's eye, I struggle with really bad when I draw, because my problem is that I can see what I want it to look like in my mind's eye, and I know exactly what I want my art to look like. But that's the problem, is I get so hung up on the end result that I struggle to create. So everything is a double-edged sword for sure, because I don't think I've had any art that turned out exactly the way I envisioned it. At the end of the day, there's always something that doesn't look the same as my mind, whether it be lack of skill, not utilizing my resources properly, getting lost in the details. There are just a lot of in-between steps when it comes to art that I get myself lost in. So I guess the neat thing about my art is that if you watch it from beginning to end, it is a complete transformation. It's because I can see things really, really well in my mind. Just means I have a really good imagination. It means that I can see what I want somebody's clothes to look like. I can do a lot without references, but that still hurts me a lot. I don't like looking at references. I rarely do. It always helps me when I do, but I feel like the mental work that I have to put in order to mix that reference with my style can be very grating and difficult. A weakness for somebody is always going to be a strength for another, and a strength for somebody is going to be a weakness for someone else. People are just so diverse. We all do things so differently. It's so fun to figure out how to do stuff and how other people do stuff and just have fun doing it and just enjoy art. Eye candy, bro. Eye candy. What you see on the screen right now is going to be the photo that he's looking at on the table, and it's going to be as if she's answering him, but she's dead. So it's going to be all sweet and junk, but this is terrible. It looks nothing like how I want it to look at the end, and I haven't worked on it a lot. I think it's just good for me to have a base, and like I say, digital art is so valuable to me because there are no mistakes, and it's none of that happy accidents bullshit either. It's you can fix it. Genuinely, you can fix anything. Sure, it might take a lot of effort, especially if you can't get your layers right, especially if this stupid ass RGB shit's happening. Like, look at that. That wasn't even there when I exited out, and I don't even, I was so mad about that. But the point is, everybody thinks differently and has different skill sets, and I think it is extremely valuable to not only recognize the skills that people have built and worked towards, but to applaud them and to ask for more of what we see that makes art individualistic. So this part was actually kind of my favorite bit. Like I mentioned before, this animatic is going to start on this scene, but then it's going to zoom in on this mountain range. And this was really fun to draw. Things that are really simple bring me a lot of joy. It's the end when I realize, oh hey, maybe I should add some detail. And then that's when I start to stress out. That's when I start to decline. It's not very great. But I really had a lot of fun drawing this because it was very simple. It was very brainless, thoughtless. I didn't have to put a lot of processes into it. And my question to you is, should I make this more detailed or should I leave it how I left it? If you give it another minute or so, you'll see where it ends up. And I might actually make this into a short because it is very satisfying to watch. I'm quite tickled with it. And just something about art and these simple shapes, it's just very satisfying. So I do all that, and then I'm about to add some shading on the rocks. Oh, after the sky, I do the sky first. But the shading that I do is like cell shading. It's very simple cell shading. And what I'm considering is if I should keep it with the cell shading or if I should try to complicate it more, because the idea is that this is a painting that Seth made. So if he created the painting, wouldn't it be more detailed, or would he want to take a more cartoonish approach? Here you see me fill it in. It looks really cool. It's like a cartoon scene. I like it. I almost really love the simplicity, but it doesn't fit in with the rest of the painting being not simplistic. But it's nice. I like it. I think I'm going to keep it. Here, I'm about to start adding some bodies for him, and then I'm like, no. I'll get back to that later. This is him and his oldest daughter and his oldest son. It is the only picture of his oldest son that he has on this wall in this animatic. All of the other pictures of his son are his youngest son. And we're starting to wind down. We only have a few more minutes left on this. And this is where I would have left off at this point. Just trying to get in the details right now for the little tiny bits. And it's going pretty well. I realized after I stopped recording that this photo actually needs to be black and white, because this photo would have been taken around the 50s, maybe, perhaps. 40s, 50s, 60s. I'll look into that later. I'll get the details of how this picture needs to look. But by the time I'm done drawing all the photos and everything, they should each reflect the time period that they were taken in, which is a really fun little bonus thing, I guess. Like the birthday party one, I kind of want to do a couple more things to it to make it really feel 90s, because that birthday party would have been in the 90s. And I just kind of want to give it that vibe, you know? It's going to be really fun to give all these photos personalities. And like I said, all the little details at the end, like the lights, the flickering lights, and the zoom into the photo, and the picture frames I'm going to add. It's just going to be really fun. It's going to be really good. I don't have to do the details like this. Like, look at me going. I know the collar looks really bad. I know how to draw collars. It's just I kind of forgot, I guess. And I believe this is the last thing I did before I called it quits. Like I said, all this footage was 6.5 hours worth of footage. And it was 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different recordings, 10 different sessions of art. So I had to really condense it down. And once I'm done completely making the animatic and the animatic is out and everything, I am going to speed everything up that I have posted WIP-wise. And I'm going to make a master video of everything I did, because hopefully by then people will see the animatic and they'll be like, hey, wow, you showed how you made this animatic and we want to see it. And then you'll see that all of my shapes were simple and gross and not the best. And I had to carve out my characters, and I had to carve out the hair, and I had to work with Photoshop acting like a fool. I'll be like, okay, cool. A lot of work went into this. And then you'll subscribe and it'll be great. Thank you for joining me. I hope you like my art. I hope to make so much more. This isn't even the beginning. This is the prequel, bitch.